Welcome to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me, as always, is Liam Billingham, and today's film is Broken Arrow.
It's Die Hard in the desert.
How you feeling about this one?
Oh, man, hang on real quick. Let me just, oh, this is going to be a good bit. Now it's a dead bit. Oh, forget it. I was going to open my can of liquid death, like a nice, refreshing, sudsy,
Take your time. Do it.
bubbly event for a sudsy, bubbly movie. Hang on. Here we go. Okay.
Let's get this right. Let's do it. Let's commit.
Oh, my God. Okay. Wow.
Wow, you literally can't open this can.
Hey, there we go.
All right.
Real quick.
Now you're ready.
That's brisk, baby.
Excellent. Are they sponsoring the show?
No,
What's happening?
I'm going to delete the name of the company that I did that for. I'm excited.
I am so excited. I was just saying to you, like, for me, this movie is kind of like a beloved family member that I'm like can't criticize. I'm so close to this movie, and it's so tied up in like childhood memory, nostalgia, falling in love with cinema. I love this movie.
Is it your first woo?
You know what? It's an interesting question. I don't know whether this was my entry
first woo.
point. Yeah, because I was on the hard-boiled. I probably was on the hard-boiled train around that time, because it was like post Tarantino, Hong Kong cinema was like popular in high school amongst that kind of thing, and that was obviously 4 years. Hard Boiled was 4 years earlier.
But I feel like people were more talking about like Ringo Lamb and folks like that than John Woo. Though, of course, Tarantino gave credit to John Woo, and he was important to the movies.
Yeah, I was trying to remember how many times I saw this at the cinema, and I know for a fact it was at least 2.
Wow.
Possibly 3.
With your dad.
With my dad. Now, I've been waiting to tell this story for about 25 years.
Oh boy, here we go. It's the dad hour.
It's the dad hour. I know you've got one too. So, okay. So I'm seeing this movie with my dad at the local cinema. And as I said, this has been a running joke in our family for 25 years. So it's the scene in the movie later on where they're on top of the train, right? There's a prolonged fight sequence and shenanigans going on top of that train for quite a long time, right? And my dad had fallen asleep during the movie. as dads, that's something I understand.
I never fall.
No matter how much I'm enjoying the movie nowadays, that's a constant risk.
Totally.
But basically, he came to. He was sort of half awake, half asleep. Came to during that train sequence, and thinking he was saying this in his own head, loudly went, "Jump off!" in the cinema. And of course, I was like mortified, people looking and, whatever. So but it's sort of...
you would not have done well with my dad, let me tell you. The king of cringe situations.
What's your, tell me on that point.
I just very quickly
want
Bill
Billingham at with this?
Want to tell the story that my parents watched The English Patient. I don't know if I told you this story, and this might not be a great take in retrospect, but I was upstairs playing video games, and my dad came upstairs, and I was like, "How is The English Patient?" And he just looked at me and he said, "Fucking guy should have died on the plane crash."
There you go.
And then the next day we saw LA Confidential, and he was like, "Now that's a movie." Anyway, I did not see this in the movie theater. I saw it on home video. It was like, I believe I rented it on vacation. I think it came out on home video in the summer. I have some memory of that. And I rented it and probably watched it 4 times. And then I definitely owned it on VHS. And I definitely was on we would go on the summer to Cape Cod, and once we had a VHS player, I would bring like Speed, Broken Arrow. I'd bring all like the classics and just watch them. That was my sort of... I didn't love going to the beach, so I'd go to the beach for like half the day and then go home and watch movies. This is pre-internet too, or having internet there. My tweet about this movie went viral, where basically what I said was, there are moments in this movie that are absolutely transcendent, and it is also, and I mean this with love, one of the dumbest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, I think we can talk about what dumb means.
Yeah.
And I think we can talk about what dumb means in the context of what John Woo's run of American movies, really two absolute classics that he made. Well, one is, I think, recently said on a podcast, the greatest action movie of the 90s, and the other is Broken Arrow. But I think like there's something to talk about here with the idea of this movie as being, quote, dumb.
Yeah, I'm sort of just coming
Don't
to
take it
terms with that.
personally.
I'm very offended. I'm really, really hurt. It's going to take me a few moments
But
to
dumb isn't
come to
bad.
terms with it.
Dumb isn't bad. And
Well, what do you mean by that? Like,
well, I think before we do
elucidate.
that, I think I will. But before we do that, should
Okay.
we
do some fast facts?
let's do some fast facts
Fast facts.
about the film. Fast facts.
All right, put this in a little bit of context. So, Broken Arrow was released in the US by Fox, the same studio that made Die Hard, of course, on February 9th, 1996 in the US. We're now 8 years after Die Hard and approximately 5 weeks after our last movie, 12 Monkeys. It was written by Graham Yost, directed by John Woo, and it, of course, stars John Travolta, Christian Slater, Samantha Mathis, Delroy Lindo, and Frank Whaley.
Howie Long,
Howie Long and Kurtwood Smith. But if it was up to you, I'd be listing the entire
Daniel
cast
Von
list. I
Bargen,
have to stop somewhere.
Kurtwood Smith,
All right, on an estimated budget, this was
Vandy
interesting.
Curtis Hall. Vandy Curtis
I was
Hall.
coming to him.
sorry.
Chill out. On an estimated budget of 50 million, it grossed 150.2 million. Sizable hit.
What a day. What
Yeah.
days. This movie was, I think, a bit of a monster. I feel like I remember it. It was like in the culture. I don't know why I didn't see it in the movie theater. I think it's because my dad thought it looked dumb.
Yeah. I mean,
It was also R-rated, and I was too young to get into those movies by myself.
do you want to continue your point about the dumb thing now, like, and explain this and defend this attack on my beloved Broken Arrow?
So let's break it down. What I mean when I say that this is dumb, and like this is always tricky because again, like when I tweeted about this, not to keep bringing it up, people in the comments were like, "Dumb and transcendent can be in the same thing. Like they can be a movie can be both dumb and transcendent." I was like, yes, that's my point.
Right.
My point is not that like dumb is bad. It's just that like this movie has like a head full of rocks and is very like, so to break it down, like almost nothing in this movie is believable. Now, what I want to say when I preface that is that Graham Yost wrote what other movie?
Speed.
Which is, I think, one of the most believable action movies ever made because the verisimilitude, the performances, everything in it is great. This movie is like the opposite of cause and effect. So there's like a moment in the movie where Travolta and his group see like an explosion, and they see something, and then he's like, "Go find them," and he's referring to Mathis and Slater. And then all of a sudden, like 2 minutes later, a helicopter is on top of Mathis and Slater. Like the cause and effect in this movie, it's so like convenient. Everything about the writing is convenient. We found an alternate way out of this tunnel before it explodes. Like it's. And then the ending,
which looks super fun, by the way. Like it's like a water park.
Yeah,
the underground river.
And so it's like the plot and the mechanics of the plot. Look, this is an action movie podcast, right? But it's rooted in the greatest action movie of all time, where there's such a dramaturgical build in Die Hard to like everything that happens. This movie is post Die Hard in the sense that it's like almost no narrative, but like a lot of great set pieces and like moments and like. To use the term that the kids use, vibes, right? Like the plot doesn't make sense. The story doesn't make sense. Things happen sort of like haphazardly. How is Howie Long deployed on this mission and working for Travolta? Like it doesn't explain itself in a way that I think the greatest movies in the genre, Die Hard, Speed, Terminator 2, have like a built-in intelligence to them that everything makes sense. I think very little makes sense in this movie. Samantha Mathis hides under like a blanket and is not caught on this boat that these guys go on. So it's dumb. And I guess what I mean when I say that is it's kind of unbelievable or unrealistic or whatever. However, this movie fucking rocks.
Yes.
Who cares? That's my point. Like,
Yeah.
And dumb and transcendent can go together because like this features, in my opinion, one of the greatest, amazing, kind of one-note villain performances of all time. Travolta's amazing in this movie. He completely consumes the entire movie. Like
he dominates the film.
all of the oxygen.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
theories
yeah.
about why. So it's like even though the whole time, and I hadn't seen this movie in 15 years, rewatching it, I was like, boy, this movie is dumb. I was also like, this movie rocks. Like the mine sequence.
Yeah, and I want to come and talk to that.
It's a masterwork of stupid cinema.
I want to talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But I want to just, here's how I come at that. Here's how I sort of split the atom.
I have one more defense.
All right, go ahead. Say it.
And I just want to say
that
the
prosecution can rest.
I think that the reason this movie works rests on really one name. And I think we know whose name that is. Kurtwood Smith. No, John Woo. This is, I mean, hail to the king, baby. The greatest, living, filmmaker at this time, just greatest action movie filmmaker of all time, like, makes this work. And it's not that the script is necessarily like quote unquote bad. The dialogue is funny or whatever, but the craft is so impeccable in this movie that, like, who cares if, like, why is this happening? Why is Samantha Mathis? Like, all of the kind of, like, dumb problems with the screenplay go away. And I think this was also a time when guys like our dads were like, this is unrealistic. This, you know what I mean? Like, they would be so concerned with story, and it's like, this movie doesn't...
You've just seen things like Clear and Present Danger, right? Great dad movie, right? Where it's nuanced and technical, and this is none of that.
Yeah.
So that was the landscape of action thrillers that had some governmental aspect or a political aspect, whatever, around that time. It's a sophisticated genre at this point. This is almost a bit of a
the trajectory is it's dumbifying in a way. It's getting simpler and more. Also, it's directed by a guy who's not making a movie. He's not making he's not making, like, movies that are like hard espionage or hard sci-fi.
Right.
He makes action movies, and he's the Busby Berkeley of action cinema directors, which I think is important. This is a guy who makes ballet and musical theater and puts it on screen. The story is secondary.
Yes, and actually, I agree with you in a slightly different way. Like, how I sort of look at this entire film is an exercise in style. Yeah. I don't care about the plot. I don't care about logic, characterization, believability. I don't care about any of that. It's purely, I just tap into it on the level of, like, John Woo's style and the other key creative forces in this that are attuned to that, which are, one, Travolta.
Oh my God.
Whose intentionally exaggerated performance is commensurate with the style, this enhanced operatic, as you're just saying, the symphonic style, and the other key component is Hans Zimmer, whose score sort of blends both musicality and sound design as well, right? For me, so I'm just swept up in this film completely. I don't care about jumping off the train.
Right.
Sorry, Dad.
Yeah. Jump off. I love it. We got to work that into the show.
Yeah, that's going to be a new catchphrase. But basically, none of the stuff that you might be considered, in quotes, dumb, bothers me in the slightest, because I'm just completely swept up in it. And the other thing
that's a measure of the craft. To the point we talked about earlier.
And the other thing I was saying, this is why I wanted to see this multiple times in the cinema, is that in the cinema, once again, like Drop Zone, another movie that we talked about that was pretty immersive, this even more so, I would say, to some extent, you really... because it's so dependent on the visual aesthetic and that sound, and not just the Hans Zimmer sound design, but the actual sound design of, like, in the Stealth Bomber, those Top Gun like sounds of cutting through the desert, all of that sort of stuff, combined with the music, the sort of sensory overload of it, was like an experience I wanted to have multiple times. And it does lose a bit in translation to the small screen, as many of these films do. But man, I'm telling you, like, at the cinema, this was like...
transcendent.
Transcendent's
look, we
the
saw
word.
A movie recently that, from a plot perspective, might be dumb, but I think is one of the best movies of the 2020s, which is Tenet. I think that
1,000%.
As you said, when you walked out, you're like, I have no fucking idea what happened in that movie, but it kind of doesn't matter.
And I loved every second.
Yeah, it doesn't.
This is what I've always said. My theory has always been this, that the cardinal sin with cinema is being boring.
Right.
I don't even care if like sometimes if the taste level isn't great, right? Like that doesn't even bother me. Just don't be boring.
And this movie is not
It can be
boring.
illogical. It can be like bizarre.
Yeah.
But just be entertaining. And for me, this is just absolutely
it's
so
like a
entertaining.
5-star entertainment.
So much fun.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. I mean, I think you put it in a much more optimistic way. But again, like, I think dumb is fun. Like, just a head full of bricks and like a lot of fun.
I think Con Air would fall into that category for me.
Yes.
A film made by very intelligent people with very intelligent, sophisticated actors, many of whom were like darlings of indie cinema at that time.
Well, that movie. That movie is like a kind of a gem, It's like it's a very strange.
That's almost takes dumb to an art form intentionally,
and yet
it's still smart.
And when we get into that, I have become quietly obsessed with what that movie is intentionally or unintentionally saying about like the prison system and madness in society. There are like moments in that movie that I've rewatched it now 3 times where I'm like, at the time this didn't seem that smart, but now in retrospect I'm like, wow, there's some things going. Maybe I'm going to sound crazy when I pitch this theory, but I think like dumb is like a superficial characterization of something, right? It's simple, and that's kind of the point, because this movie has other things going on for it, including some Die Hard DNA.
Yeah. So again, this might be another one where people might be looking at this, scratching their heads a little bit and saying, Broken Arrow, is that really a Die Hard corollary? Well, yes, it is. I would argue.
So there.
That's that. That's it.
Yeah,
done.
that's it. Bye. Wow. No. 16-minute episode. Very good.
Just don't look at my notes. So yeah, although it's more contained and although it's not contained like Die Hard and it's more expansive, it's still basically the same principle, right? Like if you break it down, you've got highly skilled mercenaries taking over a specific geographical area to pull off this audacious heist and using massive explosions as a show of force.
Yeah.
Those are all like...
They kill those campers at the beginning, and they
exactly.
like take over like it is a takeover.
That's my next point.
Oh.
The villain's plan
Sorry,
begin... No. You brought it up perfectly. It begins with that classic Die Hard plot beat where the bad guys take out that innocent person, right? It was like the first perimeter of security.
It's kind of a sad moment because this guy's wife is
know.
like sick, and they
he's
just
quite
build
lovable,
a fire, and he's like, "Oh, Grace is," I forget her name.
Yeah,
they've
got a whole relationship.
Ice him. They just ice him.
Well, yeah, and that is of course the Theo and Carl taking out the security guards at the Nakatomi Plaza like lobby, or Baker killing the old man in the church in Die Hard 2. Or Jonathan Banks killing the guy in Under Siege 2, on the train track and all of that kind of stuff.
Under Siege 2 and Broken Arrow have some things in common, and just like how absurd
they do.
Yeah.
One being marginally better than the other. But speaking of Die Hard 2, we also have a direct connection between that film, the Die Hard franchise, and this film via
Von D. Curtis Hall,
who fun fact appeared in every single film of the 90s.
Yeah. I loved him in. I'm trying to think of a really.
What about Not Economically Viable Man in Falling Down? Remember that?
God! Oh wow!
He pops up.
You're a big Falling Down guy.
I am.
Yeah, I need to rewatch. It's been a long time.
Yeah, that was a top 10 movie.
I got guns. I got a lot of guns
for a long time. Yeah, he plays the mercenary Miller in Die Hard 2. Plays Sergeant Rhodes here. You also have the hero.
I like Von D. Curtis Hall.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, he's awesome. He also directed a great movie called Gridlocked.
Oh, I like
Tim
Gridlocked.
Roth and Tupac.
Yeah.
Really cool movie
Tim Roth.
from the 90s. You also have the hero and villain being in different physical spaces for much of the film, communicating over radio. We also have one of my favorite elements of a Die Hard on a Blank movie, corpse play. In this one, Christian Slater uses a bad guy's dead body as a counterweight to swing over the moving train.
Oh, that's right.
And John McClane is a big fan of corpse play.
Again, a great moment of like, it's dumb, but I don't care. He's like trying to get the rise on them by going over and like kicking Howie Long out, who then has the Emelman scream as he falls down, but he yells incoming. It's like you would never do that.
What scream is that?
It's called, I think it's called the Emelman. Let me look it up real quick.
Because I've often wondered that, because you hear it a lot.
Yeah. It is something that editors
it's a thing.
use. Yeah.
Because that's a very distinctive
Let me find the name
vocalization.
of it. I think I just made that up, but it's something like that.
Well, you can look at it. Well, I must make my final point on this, which is Oh, also, by the way, of course, we have the hero using improvised explosive devices to disrupt the villain's plans, like the scene on the truck where he's like, "Where'd you learn that?" New Jersey,
Trenton,
right?
New Jersey.
In conclusion,
Wilhelm scream. The Wilhelm scream
great.
is a stock
Wow, I
sound
learned
effect
something.
first used in 1951 that became an oft-repeated inside joke for sound designers to this day. According to the National Science and Media Museum, the trademark yell has been featured in more than 400 films.
Can you
It's more like
replicate
a,
it?
that kind
It's
of thing.
hard to do,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you'll
but
know
no,
it.
that's the
You kind of know it when
Wilhelm
you hear it.
scream, not M.
Yeah.
Element. I don't know
Yeah.
where I got that. That's I believe that's the sound effect that they use for Howie Long falling off the train.
No, I totally know what you mean. In conclusion, I think this is really, it's a hybrid of Die Hard, Speed, with whom it shares writer Graham Yost.
And producer Mark
Gordon,
right?
Mark Gordon, yep. And the editor John Wright. And also a bit of Under Siege, right? With the conceit of like disgruntled ex-military guys trying to steal nukes, the Pentagon response,
it even has some Jack Ryan in
industrious
it.
hero in the middle, yeah.
Frank Whaley's part, but like kind of underexplored and underexplained. But like
Subplot, yeah.
the scene where his equivalent of the like son of a bitch scene is just him interrupting and being like, there's people that are gonna like kind of this nerdy analyst type who's like, we have to tell the truth. They're like, we can't present it
truth?
this way.
How did you get this job?
Yeah, that's a good.
That was a good
Kermit
line.
Smith.
That was
so good.
That was
in
on the
this.
bubble for
I like
best
it when
line.
he turns to Frank Whaley and says, "Bitches leave." Frank Whaley has to go.
Can you fly, Bobby? All right, we're going to dive into Broken Arrow in a bit more detail after this quick break.
That's the sound of your current hype level at the gas pump. But brace yourself for something fuel nominal, because Unleaded 88 is about to take the hype to a whole new level. Unleaded 88 is cheaper, cleaner, and greener than regular unleaded. Plus, it's homegrown, making Unleaded 88 the clear choice at the pump and totally worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88, brought to you by Iowa Corn.
And we're back with Anatomy of an Action Movie, where we explore the tenets.
We live in a Twilight world.
Was that the Shatner
We
version?
live. How me think about it? That's
and there
insane.
are no friends at dusk.
How would Travolta do it? He'd be like, "We live in a." No, that's Marlon Brando.
Whoa.
What's happening? Because I'm thinking about the moment.
You got cotton balls in your mouth?
I'm thinking about this moment in the movie when he goes, "Well, the Southwest is going to be a quiet neighborhood for about
the next
10,000 years." It's so good.
Amazing stuff. We'll get into all that. Well, let's start with the as we break this down. Let's start with the premise. The premise of Broken Arrow is, while flying a stealth bomber over the Utah desert as part of a secret military exercise, Air Force Major Vic Deakins, John Travolta.
What a name.
Love it, all for it. Attacks his friend and co-pilot Captain Riley Hale, Christian Slater, causing the aircraft to crash. But Hale survives, and with the help of intrepid park ranger Terry Carmichael, Samantha Mathis, he comes to realize that the psychotic Deakins is involved in an elaborate plan to steal the plane's nuclear missiles and ransom them back to the U.S. government.
And the ticking clock is...
Can they stop him before a nuke goes off?
Yeah, before a
The
nuke
second
goes off,
one,
essentially.
right? Yeah,
and
essentially
before
the
I
second
think he
one.
escapes and hides the weapons and the radio. Oh, no. He pretends to
Yeah,
radio.
it's a double
that's right.
cross,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, as a
Loose
premise...
Loose Nukes movie.
You know, it's interesting. The term "broken arrow" is a real term.
Yeah.
and there was actually, I think there's also separate from that. I think there's a Western.
Jimmy Stewart Western
Right,
from
yeah, yeah.
1951.
But it is a real governmental term, and also the NEST team, the nuclear energy search team, that's real. So I think that a lot of this is based on like actual nuclear crisis response.
Yeah.
you know, which I think is really cool, and as a title. Like, that is a fantastic title. You know, and I love it when they say it in the trailer. It's so exciting. And they're like, we got ourselves a broken arrow.
Yeah, totally.
A broken
it's
what?
what we say. It's a term. It's what we say when we lose a nuclear weapon.
So
yeah,
cool.
and this comes out.
It's a great concept, I think.
It is, and
you know?
there. I won't go into it because there's our pals at Unclear and Present Danger talk a little bit about like the loose nukes thing of the 90s. But one thing that's really smart about this movie is the guy who's like, you go to the former Soviet reunion and
Right.
buy a nuke for the same price as a Jeep or whatever he says. Like, So it's not once
he's taken the chunks of scenery out of his mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
He's able to finish his dialogue.
We need more boardroom movies where where there's the action happening, but then there's a bunch of guys in a room
By the
trying
way,
to solve
that Pentagon probably could do a pretty passable 12 Angry Men production.
Oh,
Kurtwood Smith,
yeah.
Daniel von Bargen,
Holy
Frank
crap.
Whaley,
Yeah. Frank
is
Whaley
it
would
Whaley
be
or Wally?
I think it's Wally. I think you're right. He would be a great number 3.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Kurtwood Smith would be a great 7.
Or Glenn Gary or something.
Oh my God! Always be getting the nukes back.
Good times.
Oh my God!
So the premise is great.
Great premise.
Not too much more to say about that. This was in the era of just Graham Yost's high concept action thrill. The other one, of course, they would go on to do that we will talk about is Hard Rain, originally entitled The Flood.
I've never seen Hard Rain.
It'll be a fun one.
It's Die Hard in a rainstorm.
Yeah, it's similar, I think, to Hurricane Heist in the sense of it's the OG Hurricane Heist for the people that the Hurricane Heist heads.
This is apparently a Hurricane Heist podcast now.
Yeah, it's basically opportunistic thieves taking advantage of a natural disaster to pull off a heist, as I recall.
Who's in that one?
Morgan Freeman and Christian Slater.
He's in Hard Rain. Who's in Hurricane Heist?
Maggie Grace.
Oh, okay.
Is the lead.
Is Mel Gibson in it?
No.
Oh, he's in a different... I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah, something
I don't
else.
know.
Anywho, we digress. But we're going to flip things up a bit with the hero and villain section today because, as you alluded to earlier, I was just thinking about this, how interesting it is. The villain in this movie is John Travolta as Vic Deakins. John Travolta is scorching hot at this time, post Pulp Fiction, right? This was actually one of his first. He doesn't get Shorty, and then there's a bunch of other stuff he did around there, like Michael and Phenomenon and stuff. But this was actually one of his. There wasn't that many before. Basically, post Pulp Fiction, this was like a giant movie for him to do. A lot of those other movies I don't think had come out yet.
Yeah.
And it's therefore, I think what's so interesting about this to me, one is that he's top billed, even though he's the villain.
It's his movie,
It's totally his movie.
No offense to Christian Slater,
no,
who I love.
And Christian Slater is great. But Travolta dominates this.
Well, Christian
movie.
Slater gets the less juicy part.
Yes.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
We'll talk about him when we get there. But I was trying to think what the precedents were. There's one notable one where the star is playing the villain as opposed to the hero, the bigger star. There's a couple of big ones that I thought of in the 80s, but it was somewhat unusual.
Like what?
The Terminator and Batman.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course, yeah.
But it's quite an unusual thing. I mean, it's interesting. As a character, it's another disillusioned expatriate that, we see that in Under Siege. We'll go on to see it again in The Rock. But just what are your thoughts on this performance?
Oh, my God.
And Travolta's, stardom in this era and, what he's doing with this material? Because I think it was kind of brilliant to watch. Because if you're okay with the fact that it's so exaggerated intentionally, and you're cool with that, this is fantastically
well, this is what I'm
entertaining.
kind of what I'm getting to with dumb, and our dad's calling this movie quote unquote dumb. So I would say that on some level, this feels like a reinvention on top of a reinvention. So Travolta does Saturday Night Fever in the 70s and does Blowout and all these amazing early 80 movies. And then he kind of gets lost in the wilderness and he does Look Who's Talking and all those things. But Tarantino sort of plucks him out of this I don't know if it's movie jail, but he's not doing anything interesting and he's dying for a part. And I think of 3 performances in the 90s that, 4, but 3 besides Face Off, which again, that I think of that sort of are etched into my memory for Travolta. The first one is Pulp Fiction, of course. The second is Broken Arrow. And the third is Get Shorty.
Yes.
And the thing that I think about all the time is that these directors take advantage of Travolta as a song and dance man, specifically his command of language and rhythm. The way this guy can just be you owe me $379, and the Southwest will be he's a theater actor. This is a guy who's famous for strutting down the street. So
the swagger of it.
And to let him lean into that. Yeah. And this is not your traditional villain performance. This is hey, song and dance man, chew the scenery and like control the rhythm and like do what you want with the lines. Like that moment when he's like, where's Johnson? Like, we can't find him. He goes, find him. Like he exudes this like crazy, chaotic energy that like a lesser director than I guess Barry Sonnenfeld, Quentin Tarantino, and especially John Woo, who will, I think, create the platonic ideal of the Travolta performance a couple years later in Face Off, just like let him rip. They would have like reduced him, turned him down. And this movie is good because Travolta he's just like, fucking eat this performance alive. From the very first scene in the boxing ring where he's just like beating the shit out of Christian Slater.
How cool is that? Where that
great.
Shot and cut. I mean, are you kidding me? Like just as an opening statement.
And I think part of the reason maybe our dad struggled with it is like they probably hadn't seen a villain like this. You know, like
it was kind of groundbreaking.
You have In the Line of Fire, which is before this.
3 years.
And a couple years later, you're going to get Gary Oldman chewing the scenery in Air Force One. But and I guess
he did it in Leon the Professional, I suppose, a couple years before. Oldman's like wild performance.
We're also supposed to love John Travolta.
Right.
Like Chili Palmer, Rene Russo's experience of Chili Palmer in Get Shorty is how we're all supposed to, at the beginning we're like, who is this guy? And then by the end we love him.
Yeah.
Vince Vega is like one of the great, like when he dies in Pulp Fiction, you're sad about it. Like he's amazing.
It's just so interesting. A couple of points that, occurred to me on that point, how, Travolta, Pulp Fiction, what's so cool about what Tarantino did. What's interesting about the movie, I watched it recently because it was at the Alamo Drafthouse on my birthday, last year. So I had to go because it's my favorite movie of all time. And one of the things that struck me about watching it again is that Vincent Vega is an asshole.
Yeah, he sucks.
He is a hired killer.
Yeah.
He's horrible to Bruce Willis for no reason in that scene in the bar.
Pachuco, is that what he calls him?
He shoots up heroin and then goes for a drive. He's objectively a terrible person, but you love him.
Yeah.
And
because he's so cool.
Because he's cool, he's funny, he's charming, he's interesting, and it's so interesting that Travolta, who had traditionally played more heroic parts or
likable guys.
Likable guys.
The put upon dad and look who's talking, right?
Yeah, he has that charm and a sort of softness to him. But for his career second act, he's always been at his best, in my opinion, playing either like characters that are a little bit dark. Chili Palmer's kind of in the middle, right? Like he's a loan shark, but he
loves the movies.
But he has a childlike innocence to him that's very endearing. But Travolta's best work in his second act, or his most entertaining work, the work that's really lived on, Broken Arrow, Face Off, where he is technically the hero, but he's really the villain for the meat of the film. I
would say there's even some subtle commentary on what a wet blanket he is for the first 20 minutes of that movie, and then when they switch faces, it's like there it is.
Yeah,
like this is what we all want.
He's released, but also taken of Pelham 1, 2, 3, which I think is his like best late career performance.
He's so obnoxious in that movie. Yeah,
so that to me that's where Travolta's at his best. But the other point, just to cap this off, that I thought you made this earlier, but I actually didn't make the connection. When you reference Busby Berkeley and how this is if you look at this through the lens of it being a musical with action and the fact that Travolta is the star, suddenly it all kind of clicks into place for me. So I think I love his performance in this movie.
Genius.
It's fantastic. And it's also worth noting that he, again, and we talked about this the other day with Heat, the quote-unquote villain is actually the protagonist of the movie, in the same way that Hans Gruber is actually the protagonist of Die Hard. He's the one actually driving the action. He's the one who has a plan, and the hero is the one responding to that plan and trying to disrupt it.
Right.
Should we talk about the hero of this movie?
Yeah, let's do it. I think Christian Slater does good work precisely because he gets out of the way. And I mean that in the most sort of like endearing way. Like, I love Christian Slater. Christian Slater's great. It cuffs. Whoa. Pump up the volume. Hello. But he doesn't, I would say the biggest compliment that I can give him in the movie is he is not like a sort of like all good virtuistic figure, right? He's kind of like a regular guy who has to sort of like overcome some of his own sort of like issues of self-value or self-worth by defeating Travolta. There's a great, I texted this to you.
Yeah, I love this
There's
take.
this great So the boxing scene at the beginning, on the one hand, is a little like, let's absolutely just telegraph the themes of this movie in the opening scene. Travolta is this alpha male who beats the shit out of Slater, and like, by the way, looks pretty convincing as a boxer in that moment. And like,
he knows how to use his body.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
As a dancer. Right?
Yeah, and Slater is kind of like, can't keep up with him even though he's younger, and like can't make the killing blow, and like has moments where he kind of tricks Travolta with his little Bruce Lee kick or whatever. But then there's this, like, again, this movie is over the top and like telegraphs what it's about, and that's fine. But there's this moment after they have the boxing scene where they're both getting changed into their flight uniforms, and Slater looks at himself in the mirror and kind of like squints his eyes and like fixes his 90s haircut and kind of looks at himself, and like in his head there's like an internal monologue going here that like this guy does not like himself, he's not comfortable in his own skin, and then he walks away from the mirror, and you can actually see in his locker the advertisement for the Aurora flight training, which is what he wants to do, and later reveals like he's not going to get accepted for it. So like, Wu does this great thing of establishing like this is a guy that hasn't quite figured himself out. Then we cut to Travolta, who's looking himself in the mirror, and I think like, and it's just like, I want to fuck myself.
Yeah,
like that's just like, he's
awesome.
so confident, and I also think that's how Wu Travolta pairing is like an under discussed 90s thing, because Wu does things with Travolta.
You know what I mean?
Amazing.
It's like the choreographer and the what's the actor from the Alexander Goodenough, right? Like someone who is the ultimate like ballet performer
and can move and
but
he's
knows how
so
to move and use their body.
It is kind of
like,
like,
it's also an alpha dude,
right?
It's like masculine,
right? And then he is hoisted by his own bullshit in the end of the movie. He underestimates Hale, played by like Christian Slater.
Well, it is interesting thematically. That you bring this up, because it is kind of about masculinity, because he's Travolta robs Slater of his masculinity to some extent in that boxing scene.
Right.
He humiliates him. He patronizes him, and as you said, it has an impact on Christian Slater's like psyche when he looks at himself in the mirror. So when the plot kicks in and he screws him over, which is triggered partly by, I mean, he was going to do the plan anyway, but Travolta's insulted by something Slater says that like about his ego and how he loves having the power of God.
Yeah, would he have killed him otherwise? That's an interesting question.
Wonder, would he just have maybe like forced,
ejected him from the plane?
It made it personal.
Yeah.
I think he probably would have just like got rid of him.
Yeah.
But it made it personal, and then it becomes a pissing contest and a tug of war in this epic context about who's the alpha dog.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting.
Men will literally steal nuclear warheads instead of go to therapy, seems to be what you're saying.
Absolutely. That's how we roll.
And there is that really specific shot of Travolta's like, hey, look out your window over there.
Yeah.
Do you see that? It's coming. And Christian Slater goes to look, and then the camera pushes in on Travolta with this like killer look in his face. And that's
great.
Just, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
So
it's a good movie.
I think, I think Slater is really good, but what we've sort of found is a lot of great actors. And for me, we didn't mention this movie, but True Romance is my number 2 movie of all time.
He's amazing.
Unbelievable.
That movie rocks.
He's an incredible actor.
That
and
movie,
a lot of incredible actors tried their hand at being an action hero in this time. We've talked about some of them like Jeff Bridges and Johnny Depp, and it didn't necessarily take for them.
Yeah.
And what we're kind of also finding is like how Keanu seemed to make it look easy in Speed, but we've seen that the alchemy of that performance was actually unique and unreplicatable to some extent.
I also think Slater is this like smaller guy. He's not like an action hero. Like he looks like a slacker from down the street, right? Like he gives that vibe. He's Clarence from True Romance. And like, so it actually looks like he's working really hard in this movie, which is great. And one thing I love about this movie you don't get so much anymore is that like the hero has to be jacked now. Every hero in every action movie has to be like massive now. And I like that Slater just looks like kind of a shrimpy dude, and to some extent.
I think actually, I wish they'd almost lent into that a bit more, actually, because I think it would have played more into that dynamic of the humiliation or little man, it's
like Captain America before he becomes Steve Rogers before he becomes Steve Rogers. Or
yeah,
Captain
I just
America.
think that would have. I would have liked a little bit more of that because I actually think it's really interesting. But it's fine that it's bubbling under the surface.
Do you have the True Romance Arrow Blu-ray, the 4K?
I don't think I have the 4K. I have a whole issue with the director's cut of that movie. I
Can I
prefer
borrow
the
it?
theatrical cut.
Can I borrow it?
You have to get your have the FBI shut down the power, and then you and Theo can take a crack at it. Until then, you can fuck off.
Just me breaking into Phil's Blu-ray collection.
Do you want to talk briefly about the lady of this motion picture?
Yeah.
Samantha Mathis as Terry Carmichael.
Is this their second movie together?
Yeah, they
did
actually
pump up the
and they
volume.
were involved. They were romantically involved back in the day.
Before this movie.
Before this movie.
Okay. I like Samantha Mathis. I want to talk about the scene when Travolta's standing behind her with the gun and it gets weirdly sexual for a second. And like
That's a woo thing. It's
that's
in
such a woo
It's in
thing.
Hard Target
Yeah.
as well. There's a scene like that with
psychosexual stuff. I love
Lance
it.
Henriksen does it with Yancey Butler.
That's
she makes
right.
him load the gun for her. I mean, it couldn't be more psychosexual. And then in Face Off, there's a lot of creepy stuff like that with the daughter.
Yeah, well, the butterfly
that's-
knife.
Yeah,
but again, that's what's so good about Face Off is that he ends up being like kind of a better dad a little bit at times in the movie.
Yeah,
Except he also
yeah.
like they make a big thing of him having sex with Travolta's what's his name? Archer, Sean Archer's wife.
Right. Joan Allen.
Talk
Yeah.
about Face Off.
Yes, we'll get there.
No, yeah, that moment, and she's like, her mouth is open really wide, and she's
Yeah,
kind of like
it's-
moaning. I just think about like Wu directing that scene on set, and them being like, "What do you want us to do?" But
in a different era. I think nowadays we probably feel a bit more uncomfortable around
Well,
that
it's
stuff. But to me, in the context of this, it's like quite
I like
it's
how
effective within the tonality of the film.
Totally. Well, it's an outrageous movie. I like how resourceful of a character she is and what an ass whooper she ends up being in the movie. I don't believe the meet cute romance element of it in the way that I did with Speed. You know, that's something that this has in common with Speed.
It feels like it was cut out, actually.
Or lessened.
They had a romantic subplot that was basically.
Well, I do like that they don't kiss at
cut
the
out.
end.
Yeah.
They just kind of hug. I think that's better. And then
I
they're holding
love how
hands.
this movie ends, by the way.
The
Just
hands.
It just it feels almost like this movie is like 80 minutes to me. It's actually not. It's actually like an hour and 40. But it feels like it just to me was so brisk. And I love that they just don't mess around. It's like, job's done.
Like my delicious bubbly water here. Brisk, baby.
Yes. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with that because I don't want to say the name of the drink. So
it's a beer. No, I'm kidding.
She's
It's 10:30 in the morning.
She is. I like Samantha Mathis. I
do too.
generally enjoy. In American Psycho.
I don't
other
think
movies.
this is the best part in the world, nor is it the best written part. But I do like Samantha Mathis.
I think she's a charming presence, and they're
she's
they're
an
fun
important
together.
figure in labor around acting now.
Is that right?
Yeah. She's like played an important role. Like
cool.
sort of. I like it when you read about these actors who you know. Sometimes you think of just as actors, and then you realize they have entire second careers as like. Figures involved in unions and the labor movement and stuff like that. Because this is a labor town.
Yep. Let's move on to the section about the action, our action section, because again, and this is what I would say, to the
To your
anyone
haters?
who would, to the haters, to the Broken Arrow haters, or to anyone that I don't think there are any, but what I would say
there are.
is,
I got comments on this, like, that's the dumbest movie I've ever seen and stuff.
Well,
like that.
just give me their names.
Some
and
people
I'll,
are just miserable. Some people are
Here's
just
the
miserable.
deal, guys. Here's where I just come down on this, right?
Jump off.
What? What genre is this movie?
It's an action movie.
Does it satisfy as an action movie? I think so.
The mine scene alone.
Okay, let's do it. Let's
when
get into this.
Travolta jumps over, like runs up the hill, when Slater runs up the hill and is firing both guns at the same time. Now, look, this is the cliche. This is the woo. Everyone talks about this, the double guns in a woo movie. But I submit to you, it's the fucking greatest thing you've ever seen, right? Like, it's just, and we talked about this with Hard Boiled. It doesn't feel violent because it's beautiful and it's gun fu and it's like. It's staged at such a preposterous
real,
level.
it's stylized.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be like reality based.
Right.
That's what you have to understand with John Woo's films. It's not reality based, right? It's exaggerated. Now, the other thing that occurred to me about this, we've used this term, Philly special, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. How would you define that expression?
I mean, it's exploding helicopters. That's really what it is.
For me, but go on.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
because I have a couple of little
I
points
think
I just
Philly
want to make
special is like something that I mean, it's sound and fury signifying everything would actually be the way that I would describe it. We like our Shakespeare here. But it's like, yeah, I
love that. That's
you go for
fantastic.
a sort of aggressively powerful, overwhelming sensory physical experience of action that transcends the intellectual and moves into the sublimely physical.
I love that. What a definition. I put you on the spot for that.
Yeah.
The reason I ask, we've used this term of Philly special for something that I, being Phil, absolutely love that just does it for me. And for me, this whole film is Philly special.
That's great.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was like, sometimes we've used this term, the soul out of your body moment.
Yeah, it's
like
your
how
soul
would you
leaves your body.
describe that? Like, because I heard that in a very specific context for the first time. But for anyone that might be confused or about that expression, was that something that you would?
No, it's just something I say. I mean, I probably have heard it somewhere, but I think for me, it's like I think that I am someone who is somewhat allergic to nostalgia. I hate when particularly dudes are like, it was better when, because guess what? It wasn't actually. It was just easier to be alive for a certain type of person. That said, I think it is nice to reflect on a time as a younger person or whatever when like you were full of wonder and you didn't understand how things were made and you didn't understand how like complicated it is to make a movie like Broken Arrow. And you were sort of watching these things in a bubble and like it was forming in your brain. Because like for me, to come back to the Shakespeare of it all, like action movies taught me about drama and conflict from a young age in a way that like, I mean, my dad made me read Macbeth when I was a kid. Like I was like well educated and given the opportunity to, but it was never like, these are good and these are bad. It was a very rare thing. My dad would say like Demolition Man looks stupid or whatever, but like he also watched that shit, right? So like for me, when I say my soul leaves my body, it's like going back to that feeling I had where I didn't quite understand like the nuances of the drama or the conflict or whatever, and like feeling like this is like a transcendent moment. Like I'm leaving my sort of like earthly experience. You know, the first time I saw The Fugitive, the first time I saw The Rock, The Fugitive, and Face Off, Speed, but like particularly The Rock, The Fugitive, and Face Off, because like I was seeing images I'd never seen and I didn't know how they worked. And like, so for me, it's like, you leave the mundane of every day. And because I saw all of these movies in the same movie theater for years and years, like that was like church, right? Yes. And like the idea of, I mean, I can't believe we're doing this on a Broken Arrow episode, but the whole idea of religion is that like you believe in something greater than yourself. And so like for me, a little bit my soul leaving my body is like watching these incredible images that like hopefully will endure forever. And I think whatever we might think about Broken Arrow, it has some of those images in it.
It's filled
Most
with them.
of them are Travolta, but they're all there.
It's filled with them. And, you know, there was a beautiful definition because it's something that we've sort of said flippantly. And to me, it's very important because to me, that's actually the aspiration of action cinema in general in some cases, but particularly action cinema, because it is that like commingling of heart, mind, and spirit,
right?
And to some extent, the unknowable, you know, of just the magic of cinema,
right.
The magic of like the excitement that you feel, the tingling that you feel, like
right.
your chest, you can feel it in your chest. It's almost as if you are aware of your own soul, like in your chest,
right?
When all of these forces pull together, the music, the imagery, the story, and that je ne sais quoi,
right?
They all merge together like a river. And it just sweeps you up, and you can feel your own spirit inside you,
right?
And that is to me like what action cinema can do at its zenith. And there are films that I would say have done that recently: Top Gun: Maverick, Ambulance,
right.
Tenet. They have all had that. This is alive and well in cinema,
and there are other types of movies that can do that too.
Absolutely,
you know?
absolutely.
Like, it's not limited to action movies, of course, you know. But and I think also like, as I got older as a person, I led with my head and less my heart. And I think that to some extent, some of these movies, even though I think I reflect on them with my head a little bit more than I used to, like there's a lot of heart there. And Travolta's performance in this movie is like etched into my psyche.
Yeah.
For example.
The last point I just wanted to make about this was, for me, this film had a soul out of your body moment.
Which is when?
I wonder, can you guess?
It's when Howie Long says, "You the man, Deke." No, it's,
that ticks a box for me on another level as an NFL fan.
Does it involve a helicopter?
It does.
Is it when they take out the helicopter, or when Travolta? No, sorry. Is it when Slater? I don't know. You tell me.
So I've watched this moment a few times because one of the things I had the soundtrack to this movie on CD, and I remember that it literally had a sticker on it that said featuring Dwayne Eddy on guitar as well. Like that was actually part of the selling thing. But anyway, that's sort of by the by. The point is I listen to the soundtrack a lot, and it's one particular music cue. And this is what I'm talking about to your earlier point, transcendence, when all of these things combine.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the scene in the mine where they realize, holy shit, the nuke is actually going to go off, which is a really ballsy move for a movie. Because usually it's all like the ticking clock and we get it and we cut the green wire just in time and all of that shit, right? This movie's like, no, fuck that. At the midpoint, we're going to blow a nuclear weapon on US soil, right? And you realize that, holy shit, they're actually going to do it. And the way that it's the cross-cutting, the music is building, the Zimmer music is building.
Oh, I know.
The Humvee pulls out. You see this incredible aerial shot of the Humvee that Travolta and Howie Long are in, like escaping. And then the music cuts to the shot of the Nest helicopter, like inbound. And you've also got Slater and Mathis trying to escape.
Yeah.
So there's a cross-cutting of all these different things. And that's what I'm talking about when it takes you over the mountain into the fucking stratosphere.
Yeah.
And I am in movie
and
heaven.
this also does that thing that they do really effectively where it's like there's the moment of quiet before the nuke goes off. So you see the deer kind of like turn and look or like, yeah, I mean, it's like, that's like classic. That's actually like classic film theory, right? Like the juxtaposition of these images against each other to create a larger impression. Like that's like Eisenstein stuff.
Yeah,
it's Kuleshov more.
To me, that's like why that encapsulates why this movie is so special to me.
Yeah,
you know,
and Wu knows what the fuck he's talking about. Like, I mean, he's a great filmmaker.
It's we were blessed. You know, we are blessed to have this man among us, leaving us, as you said, these images and that are going to live forever.
Just wait till we get to Face Off, because I think my Philly special, my Liam special, is when like.
You need your own one.
Well,
we need a cool term for it.
Philly special sounds better. Also, it also sounds like a cheesesteak. Is when like the acting, like the zenith level acting in Face Off, which is absolutely absurd. I mean, to be clear, it's absurd, but those guys are fucking going for it in that movie. There's something about that, like the standoffs in Crimson Tide, right? Do that for me. I think the standoff in The Rock for me, like that's when like the guy before the violence, but when
I will not repeat that order.
Yeah.
That scene has that where you're like, holy shit!
It has been the honor of my life serving with you, General.
That film's full of them.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But to me, that's the aspiration.
Yeah, the dream of it all.
Anyway, the action in this film is absolutely incredible. Just the humor we don't need to talk about in detail.
Travolta's funny.
The film has a sense of fun and playfulness.
It also at times is grating. Like, I forget the name of the character, but the guy who's funding the operation who gets the flashlight. Bob Gunton. Like, he's so annoying in this movie. And that's not a criticism of him, but like...
We're going to come to him in a section you can probably guess. The 90s, what is it? He practically invented our whole way of life, savage. From Demolition Man.
Oh, yeah,
he's just always that
I
dickhead.
Forgot he was,
character.
Yeah, of course. God,
He's
I love that movie.
He's great. Well, shall we move on to now that we've got all highfalutin? Should we bring things down to earth and take a little?
Let's put on our flight suits.
Let's put on our flight suits and parachute.
Hang on, let me just look at myself unsatisfyingly in the mirror. Okay,
good to go.
Also, I don't smoke, but Travolta makes smoking look good in this movie.
Yeah, he's he. There's a lot of that.
You heard that here first.
Get Shorty, especially. The 90s. So let's head over to the Die Hard Oscars, aka the Action Movie Awards, and hand out some gold statues for this picture. The first category is the John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line.
Oh, what are the nominees? I bet you do.
The first one we talked about this in the opening scene. That was the
I may have
the
written
Die
one
Hard,
down. Keep talking.
the Die Hard-esque scene where they take out the first layer of security, where that nice man who's just camping with his poor sick wife says, what's the fine for something like this? And the guy goes, pretty steep.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good
and then
one.
you see like horrific blood in the tent.
Oh yeah, it's rough, man.
She had a bad night.
Yeah,
that was rough.
Poor lady.
That actor, by the way, is James McDonald playing Park Ranger Baker. He's an excellent actor that I remember particularly playing the prick hostage negotiator in Phone Booth.
Oh, I like Phone Booth.
Phone Booth is great. Die Hard at the Phone Booth.
I think it's
we're gonna do it, but he pops up in a lot of these films. He actually has a small part in Executive Decision. He's a really, really good actor.
Who is he?
And he plays. He's like, I think he's one of the tech guys or something.
Oh.
You know, like a small part. But he also plays the guy in The Fan whose child is sick, and Wesley Snipes is forced to go and see him. As the baseball player
yeah,
to like
Fan. That's Philly special.
Do a favor. That's Philly special.
Yeah, that's
in a
Philly
dark
special.
way.
That's a good movie.
Anyway,
This is a Tony Scott
there's
podcast.
Tony Scott's films are Philly special from first frame to last.
Yeah, The Hunger. Mwah.
These are the others. I've got. Would you mind not shooting at the thermonuclear weapons?
That's good.
That's a beast. You're out of your mind. Yeah.
Ain't it cool? Yeah, that might.
Which literally launched a website.
I know. I didn't know that until this week.
Yep, that was the origin point of that Ain't It Cool news.
And that went well for everybody.
Yeah, and there were no problems later. Moving on. Fuck them if they can take a joke. Sets off a nuclear weapon.
That's, oh my God. But it's, the thing that's so is that it's all Travolta's delivery.
Yeah,
and
it's how he says it. Yeah,
and the way he just, my quiet theory that John Woo's in love with John Travolta or in lust with him, the way he just lets him stare at the nuclear weapon, and these shots are like,
well, it's
nice
fetishistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a lot. Woo's stuff is fetishistic.
That's a good way to put it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And Nick Winding Refn, by his own admission, is like a fetish filmmaker,
David Lynch,
right? Like, yeah, it's
part
of the filmic language.
I think Michael Mann is like a tech fetishist, right? Like, I think being a kind of a pervert for something is part of being a filmmaker.
David Fincher thinks that we're all perverts.
Oh yeah,
and he's probably right.
Yeah.
And then the last one is your favorite. Well, he says, well, what are we going to do if they don't pay? Well, if they don't, the Southwest will be a quiet neighborhood for the next 10,000 years.
The way that was cut in the trailer, it kind of like is interrupted by an image, and that's always going to be. He's like, the Southwest will be a quiet neighborhood, and there's an explosion. And he's like, for about 10,000 years. It's so good.
Just cool as fuck.
He's cool as fuck.
What was your one? Did you have an addition?
I don't have an additional one. I think the winner has to be Ain't It Cool.
Huh.
Or the South. I don't know.
It's probably the most memorable
really
line,
like Trenton, New Jersey. I think that's a great.
Funny. Yeah.
New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey, right? New Jersey getting some tough hits in the 90s.
All right. Yeah. So are you going with... I would probably go with... would you mind not shooting at the thermonuclear weapons?
That got
as a piece of written
me
dialogue.
So much.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that is a good one.
All right. Let's move on to the Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film.
Bob Gunton.
Is that a joke, or you go?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
You seem like you hate him.
No, I don't. He's annoying, but that's the point of the point of the role.
I've got Samantha Mathis as Terry Carmichael, and a couple of 3 guys we haven't really talked about who are all awesome. Delroy Lindo in the house.
Jesus, yeah.
As Colonel Wilkins. Are you kidding me with the gravitas of this actor?
I think, just as a side note, because it came out during COVID, nobody talked about how fucking good he was into Five Bloods.
Right.
He is amazing in them.
There was buzz. I mean, it kind of got a little lost in the
no
culture.
One's gonna, unfortunately, take that seriously. He's amazing in that movie.
He's incredible in everything.
Talk about Get Shorty.
Yeah.
It's great.
He's so he just grounds everything. He's so good.
Just thinking about him talking to Yayo in the airport and Get Shorty and how good he is.
He keeps calling him like Yahoo and stuff. Yeah, he's amazing. Kurtwood Smith as Secretary of Defense Baird.
Yeah.
And Frank Whaley as Giles Prentice. Those are my 4 noms.
Okay.
Would you have a pick?
It's got to be Delroy Lindo.
It's got
to be Delroy Lindo. I also want to shout out the guy whose name I forget, but was in Clear and Present Danger and is in Breaking Bad, who has 2 seconds in this movie talking about the nuclear fallout.
Raymond Cruz.
Yes!
Who also was in every single action
But
film
he's
of the 90s.
so good in the 45
Yeah, he's
seconds.
brilliant.
He's like
because his
almost
voice
in
is
tears.
cracking.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great...
I'm glad he got Breaking Bad to give him he's such a good actor.
He is.
And such a a steadfast stalwart of the action genre.
That's a good shout. The Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie. I've got 3 nominees.
Okay.
Howie Long as the treacherous Master Sergeant Kelly. Sean Toob as Max. You probably thought I was a computer nerd, huh?
That guy
Wrong.
That guy is great.
I was a Navy SEAL, lady.
I love that moment because it's commenting on the Die Hard thing. Like every movie has to have one of these geeks, and then this guy is like kicks ass.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it was like a little bit of commentary on in the same vein as enough nuclear weapons to orbit Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like the genre is becoming self-aware. Maybe we can get AIs to write these movies.
Maybe we could get AIs to do this podcast and just
Welcome
check
to
out.
the podcast. That's Philly special.
Porn.
Oh no,
porn,
the AI
porn,
died.
porn,
The AI
porn.
died. It's dead.
Click on this. Click on this. Click on this. Click on this.
God.
That would be on your AI.
Yeah, you guys
podcast.
like it?
The DJ 3000 with 10
This
kinds
week
of annoying
on the
chatter.
podcast, Hard Rain.
And our last, the bookie's favorite for this category, Bob Gunton as Mr. Pritchett.
Yeah, it's Bob Gunton.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer.
A little
and
bit.
Finally,
Is there a little subtle commentary in the decision for Travolta to have an antagonistic relationship with the financier as we're approaching the 90s and the conglomeration of studios and the idea that Travolta's the one in the weeds doing it, who's the artist, and who's like, fuck this finance guy.
I mean, that's an interesting theory. I who knows? Maybe.
Thank God it's only
fun.
gotten better from
It is fun how
Yeah.
he's like the money man is trying to interfere with the process.
He sucks. And Bob Gunton's great.
no.
He just sucks. He's so
So
shitty.
good.
It's like, shut the fuck
Well,
up.
which brings us to our next point in Best Death. By the way, is it presented by by Marco tonight?
No more table! That was too loud.
You're bringing Travolta level energy to the performance of Marco. I love it.
Next time you have a chance to kill somebody, don't hesitate.
Wow.
Fuck them if they can't take a joke.
While smoking a cigarette in slow motion.
Bow, 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 bow. I can't really do
And the
that.
first nominee is Travolta killing Bob Gunton with a torch.
Yeah, that's it.
Or
He wins.
flashlight.
Yeah, it's over.
Hush! Hush!
He's so good.
Amazing.
Jesus.
So we've got that one. We've got Terry killing Max with a spinning hammer throw.
Yeah, that shit's amazing.
It's pretty cool. Big shout out to the guy who gets struck in the chest with the helicopter rotor blades.
Oh, so gross.
Enjoyed that one as a helicopter
I
aficionado.
like how he opens the gas tank on the helicopter. And
It's filled with them
explodes.
as well. And I love how the helicopter pilot seems kind of stupid where they're like,
like, what?
cut the thing. Yeah, he's like,
Huh? Turns the ignition.
turn it
Yeah.
on.
Haven't you ever
He's, like,
seen an
stroking
action
it.
movie before?
The guy, Travolta's signaling like, cut the power. He goes, turn it on, yeah.
This is how action movie pilled I am. If I'm like standing on the street and someone starts a car near me, I'm like, that's gonna explode.
And then
I'm
finally,
unwell.
Travolta being impaled by the nuke, then blown to smithereens.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean,
it's Travolta getting the nuke to the chest. Also, the way he kind of looks at the nuke and he's like, let's do
fuck
this.
me with that. That
So I
phallic
that's some
nuclear missile
unintentional commentary.
fucking through my
Yeah.
chest with this nuke. It goes so crazy.
It's amazing. So good. Also, how Slater dives out the door and pushes the very convenient cancel button. I have a question. Can a nuclear weapon just be shut down that quickly? I feel like it's like a train. It's like it needs like a runway because it's a prime
This was what
nuclear
Roger
core.
Ebert's criticism in the movie, where he basically said like your TV remote control operates this nuclear missile.
I mean, I would be into it if the bat plane picked it up and drove it out into the ocean with Batman in it, and then Batman survived. In the best Batman movie. But that's just me.
Well, we'll be back with more hot takes like that after this short break. And we're back with our final section of the show, the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz, where the scores can really change. So just you're on your own
me and
tonight.
you.
So
no, I'm actually going to have AI Phil help me.
Okay.
I'm here to help. Your dad's going to call in. Jump off.
all right. Question number 1. John Travolta and Frank Whaley previously acted together in a memorable scene from which iconic 90s crime movie?
Pulp Fiction. Big Kahuna Burger.
Check out the big brain on Brett.
I usually eat vegetarian because my girlfriend's a vegetarian.
Oh boy, number one. That's number one for me. All right, question number 2.
You think God came down?
I gave you an easy one because
Okay.
I'm gonna
Now you're
give you.
Now you're
I've got
gonna
a couple
shove
of
a nuclear warhead into
couple
my
of trickier
chase.
ones. Question number 2. One of John Travolta's most memorable lines in Broken Arrow is the aforementioned "fuck 'em if they can't take a joke." In which sharp-tongued late 80s satire does Christian Slater say the exact same line?
Pump up the volume?
No.
Wait, light 80s satire. Okay, I need a clue.
We're calling Al Powell. We're
Yeah.
going to phone a friend.
Yeah,
All right.
calling
Al's on the line.
AI Phil.
And he's telling us, AI Al is telling us this jet black comedy set in a high school also starred Winona Ryder.
Fuck me. Heathers.
Are you Heather's Hive?
I'm Heather's Hive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Heather's.
Pretty
I haven't seen it in a
incredible.
long time.
It's
but
really good. It's it holds up. It's great.
Finally, our final section of this show is Convoluted Corner. I pictured like some kind of gigantic like circus.
Your dad just yelled, "Jump off!"
Get on with it is probably what he's yelling. In a previous episode, we discussed the fact that the Die Hard soundtrack features a piece of music from the Alien score after John McTiernan fell in love with it as a temp track.
You know what's a good movie? Aliens. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's all right.
It's fine. For similar reasons, Hans Zimmer's twangy compositions for Broken Arrow were also utilized in another popular film from the late 90s. Can you name the hit horror movie that reuses Zimmer's Broken Arrow music score?
Is it Scream 3? Scream 2.
It's Scream 2.
Yeah.
It's Scream 2.
It's
yeah.
Scream 2. So thank you very much to Twitter for people mentioning this again and again and again and again.
Yeah, it was used as a theme for David Arquette's character Dewey. So Wes Craven apparently fell in love with that as a temp track. It was the same kind of deal. I remember I saw Scream 2. I love the Scream movie, especially the first two.
Yeah.
And seeing them at the theater and that bit happening, I was like, because I had the CD.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's Broken Arrow.
Man, what a time.
Oh,
I have a
great.
trivia question.
Okay.
Actor Chris Mulkey has a small part in the film Broken Arrow. In what iconic video game series did he act with Mark Hamill?
Wing Commander?
Yeah!
Oh, wow. That was, I took a shot.
It is Wing Commander 4, The Price of Freedom.
Wow.
Which, in addition to those games,
I never played him.
oh, fucking incredible.
Yeah.
So,
Matthew Lillard was in one or something, right? Speaking of Scream.
so let's talk about very quickly who was in the Wing Commander games. Wing Commander 3, The Price of Freedom. Wing Commander 3 was The Heart of the Tiger. Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell. Malcolm
Dang.
McDowell is in that. Price of Freedom is Chris Mulkey. It's Mark Hamill. Wing Commander Privateer was Clive Owen. It's one of his
Wow.
early parts. These games were like this was when people would, I know it's a different generation, but when people would talk about video games replacing movies, I was like, it has to be these ones because these are like these amazing interactive movie kind of thing. So whenever I see Chris Mulkey in a movie, I'm like, Wing Commander 4, The Price of Freedom. That game's final mission is you debating with another character and picking the right answers to like
Wow.
stop a war.
Was Matthew Lillard in the movie?
Matthew
or
Lillard
he
was in the movie with Freddie Prinze Jr. The
Okay.
movie that was directed by the guy who made the games. I never even watched the
I
movies,
haven't
but I was
seen-
like Wing
seen it
Commander
either, but-
Hive as
Yeah,
a kid. I was
wow.
really into it.
Well, just going back to what we were saying about the Scream 2 thing, apparently Wikipedia said that it also features in Speed 2, which I have yet to verify. And speaking of Speed, we have a little...
Look at you with the transition.
A little plug, a little announcement to make
So
as we move to
this
the end
has
of
already
this.
come out, yes?
I believe
Okay.
it came out 2 days ago. So do you want to explain?
Yeah, so guys, several months ago, almost 50 weeks ago, we heard a little podcast. The first episode, I think, was what we talked about, called 50 Miles Per Hour, which is a 50-episode oral history of the movie Speed, which I don't know if you know, but we're fans of, hosted by Chris Tapley. We were like, this podcast is
Our friend and yours.
extremely shit. Our friend and yours. He came on, he talked about Speed, and then we had the incredible honor
Unbelievable.
of coming on to talk about the 10 greatest action movies of the 90s from our perspective. So that episode is out now. There are some hot takes in there. Phil and I's number 10. A lot of people have questions about. But it's a great episode.
There are a few jokers in the pack.
I can't believe how cool it is that we have like a little moment on this show for a movie that like we both love and have been standing forever. You know, I told my sisters about that and they were like, oh yeah, Speed. I loved that movie. And I feel like it's now finally, this show is going to be instrumental in it getting the due it deserves as like arguably one of the greatest
and the
movies
episode
ever made.
before our one is well worth listening to. I'll just say that as well. Like Chris has pulled off some incredible coups with this
guests,
show.
Amazing. The whole show is amazing. Katie Walsh, our former guest, has been on the show. The
Nick DeSamlian has been on the show.
Has been on the show. There's great guests. Like the Fuse guys, that one's a good one.
And he actually got John McTiernan, Paul Verhoeven, Guillermo del Toro.
I got a little emotional listening to Paul Verhoeven talk about his career with working with Jan de Bont. And I mean, Paul's my go-to number one guy. It's number one guy. He's just the greatest of us. This, you know, Chris will probably be back on the show talking with us again.
We certainly hope so. Yeah.
But just thank you, Chris. You're the best, and you made one of the great movie podcasts.
So
of all
thank
time.
you for having us on. So once again, that show is called 50 miles per hour, 50 mph. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
You probably listened to it.
You're probably already. You're probably already all over.
And
it,
if you don't like our list, you can go off.
Fuck them if they can't take a joke.
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
When you hear my my number 10, yeah.
This wasn't on your list, was it? It wasn't on mine either, but now in retrospect, I'm like, but we covered.
I made a rule only to do one director. But anywho, you can check that out on 50 miles per hour. That's all I've got. Rate, review, subscribe.
Send us an email, questions, you know, that kind of thing. diehardoab@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter, tweeting. Phil tweets from his Cybertruck mostly these days.
I just rove around LA, like crashing it, having to get it fixed, sending it back because it doesn't work.
The accelerator literally gets stuck. Yeah, no, it's good.
You know, I have a robot drive it, so it's even more dangerous.
I'm actually thinking about re-editing the scene in Die Hard and putting a Cybertruck in that the terrorists blow up instead of the giant armored
vehicle. Ourselves a broken truck. A broken what? A broken truck.
It's what we call when we buy Elon Musk's truck.
And on that note, we will see you next time on the show.
Yeah, the film is The Executive Decision. We'll be back next time with a movie that doesn't actually feature the president, despite being called The Executive Decision.
See you then, guys.
Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast created and hosted by Philip Gawthorne. Liam Billingham co-hosts and produces the show. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at DieHardOAB. Rate, review, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, tell your movie podcast-loving friends about Die Hard on a Blank. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.
Brace yourself for something fuel nominal. Unleaded 88 is the clear fuel choice. It's cheaper, cleaner, and greener. And it's grown by Iowa corn farmers. Now that's totally worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88.
Save big money now at Menards. Mastercraft has been making great doors inside and out for over 50 years. Choose from the best in-stock selection of doors, ready to take home today. Or design your door your way in-store or on Menards.com. Save big on Mastercraft doors at Menards, America's #1 home improvement retailer for customer satisfaction, according to J.D. Power. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Save big.